Winter in the Middle Ages was the harshest test of endurance. Peasants began anxiously preparing for the bitter cold as early as late autumn.
When the summer harvest proved meager, food supplies inevitably ran low.
Ordinary families huddled closely together in dark, cold houses to stay warm. Survival during those harsh months depended entirely on strict discipline. Every crumb of precious bread was strictly accounted for by the head of a large peasant family. The long winter mercilessly tested the human body to its limits. Desperate people had to eat things that today would seem completely unthinkable.
Hungry peasants cooked a thick soup from tree bark and dried acorns.
Historical chronicles reveal truly incredible facts about overcoming winter famine. To save their children, mothers mixed ground straw into their meager rye flour. During the harshest, coldest years, entire villages set out to search for food in the snow-covered forest. Modern technology allows us to easily obtain any food year-round. Ancient people were completely deprived of such a pleasant and life-saving luxury. Their harsh methods of winter survival are striking in their pragmatism and incredible endurance. The harshness of nature forced people to use absolutely every available natural resource. Many of these forgotten, desperate solutions are now fully validated by science. Below are detailed accounts of the astonishing facts about the medieval struggle for survival. Bread has always been the mainstay of any medieval diet. However, during harsh winters, grain supplies often ran out too early. At such critical moments, peasants would flock to the nearest forest. There, they methodically stripped the bark from pine, birch, or elm trees. Today, this practice sounds like a scene from a dark horror movie. In the modern world, people buy fiber at pharmacies with their own money. Medieval peasants got it absolutely free, along with broken teeth.
Chewing this coniferous bread required immense caution and patience.
Sometimes crushed dry leaves were added to the flour for extra bulk. This strange mixture literally saved thousands of lives until spring. Baking this bread required a very specific temperature control. The wood flour didn't bind well and often crumbled right in the oven. That's why the peasants' flatbreads were made as thin as possible and very dense. Outwardly, they resembled pieces of cardboard more than an appetizing edible product.
In taste, they were thoroughly saturated with resin and the bitterness of the forest.
To a modern city dweller, eating trees seems like an example of utter madness. However, biology fully confirms the presence of carbohydrates in tree cambium. Ancient people intuitively found the only available source of plant energy. Trees literally became the last reliable line of defense against starvation. The cold forest fed those who had been betrayed by their own frozen fields. The process of harvesting bark was strictly regulated by local, ruthless feudal lords. Even in years of famine, peasants were forbidden to destroy valuable timber trees. Illegal damage to the lord's forest was punishable by very severe corporal punishment. Therefore, desperate people stripped only permitted branches or old stumps. Daily survival constantly teetered on the edge of violating medieval law. Small children found this harsh diet particularly difficult to endure. Their weak stomachs often swelled painfully from the indigestible wood pulp. Caring mothers tried to soak these cakes in water or weak broth. This slightly eased the agonizing process of swallowing and digesting the tough substitute. Such forest cuisine was the cruelest ordeal for every member of the family. Today, nutritionists constantly debate the benefits of trendy low-carb diets. Such philosophical discussions would have seemed incredibly ridiculous to medieval people. Their sole task was to fill an empty stomach with at least something solid. The long-awaited feeling of fullness was achieved solely through the physical volume of what was swallowed. Nutritional value inevitably took a back seat in the face of hunger. The tradition of baking bitter bread from bark persisted in Europe for centuries. The last documented historical instances date back as late as the early 20th century. This brutal method of survival proved its incredible practical effectiveness. Tree bark bread has forever remained a symbol of human resilience in dark times. It is the most striking example of how desperation instantly gives rise to ingenious solutions. Fresh meat was a huge rarity during the long winter. Ordinary poor peasants saw it on the table only on major holidays. Ordinary bare bones became a true culinary treasure during the cold season. If a starving family managed to get their hands on them, a complex cooking process would begin.
Throwing away the bones after the first broth was considered an absolutely unforgivable waste.
Here begins the most unexpected part for modern, spoiled foodies. The bones were simmered persistently in boiling water until they crumbled. This monotonous process could take several days of continuous, gentle simmering. The main goal was to extract every last drop of bone marrow. Ancient people desperately tried to obtain every last molecule of valuable collagen. Often, even rough hooves were thrown into the bubbling cauldron. This resulted in an incredibly thick, viscous, and murky broth. This strange broth had an extremely distinctive and unpleasant taste. However, its final nutritional value was truly fantastic for an emaciated body. The thick, warm consistency gently coated the stomach and dulled hunger for a long time. Modern science calls this beneficial product by the trendy term bone broth.
In prestigious, expensive restaurants, it is served as an elite health dish.
Medieval poor people drank it solely to preserve their own fading lives. They had no idea what collagen meant, but they understood its effect perfectly well. Their weary joints received the critically needed support for hard labor. The process of endless simmering required constantly keeping the fire going in the hearth. Dry firewood in winter was valued no less than the meager food itself. Therefore, the precious heat from the simmering also served to warm the home. It was a truly ingenious example of medieval energy efficiency in harsh living conditions. Not a single stray spark or drop of fat went to waste. When the bones became completely soft, or they were sometimes ground with stones, this pale, chalky mass was carefully added to the flour to increase its filling power. It is hard for a modern person to imagine homemade baked goods with added hooves, but it was precisely such outlandish recipes that helped people survive the harshest February frosts. The calcium obtained from bone meal effectively strengthened the teeth of the exhausted peasants. Today, professional athletes drink hot beverages to quickly regain their strength. The thick medieval bone broth was the perfect equivalent of such a powerful sports energy drink. Only its strange taste strongly resembled boiled-out old leather shoes. Nevertheless, the exhausted peasants drank it down to the very last drop. This magical liquid literally forced the frozen peasant blood to flow through their veins. This amazing reusable soup vividly demonstrates the incredible resilience of human biology. People categorically refuse to die, squeezing the last nutrients out of inedible items. This useful culinary practice was passed down from generation to generation for centuries. It quietly saved more lives than any grand decree of a medieval king. Hard-nosed pragmatism always easily triumphed over any notions of high culinary aesthetics. The complete absence of fresh greens in winter led to catastrophic consequences. The body quickly began to suffer from an acute shortage of essential vitamins. First and foremost, this concerned vitamin C, which is critical for health. This dire shortage inevitably led to widespread and extremely painful scurvy. The ancient technology of food fermentation became a true lifesaver for entire communities. Sauerkraut and various root vegetables could be stored throughout the long, cold months. People didn't need modern electric refrigerators at all for this complex process. During natural lactic acid fermentation, vegetables miraculously accumulated new vitamins. This chemical process transformed ordinary cabbage into a truly powerful medicine.
This is exactly how entire large villages were spared from the painful loss of healthy teeth.
Modern medicine has long proven the incredible benefits of natural fermented foods. However, medieval peasants knew absolutely nothing about complex microbiology or chemistry. They acted solely on the basis of their ancestors' centuries-old practical experience. Vegetables were simply packed tightly into huge wooden barrels under heavy weights. Bacteria independently carried out all the subsequent complex work of preserving the harvest. Today, people buy expensive probiotics in attractive plastic pharmacy packaging. In the Middle Ages, the main probiotic was an ordinary dark barrel of sauerkraut. The brine from this barrel was considered an incredibly valuable and healing nutritious drink. It was carefully given to frail children and the oldest members of the family. This sour liquid literally brought dying people back to normal life. An important benefit of fermentation was the preservation of the crisp texture of the summer vegetables that had been harvested. Amid the monotonous, bland winter fare, this had enormous psychological significance. The crunch of sour cabbage reminded weary people of the warm, bountiful summer that had passed. This helped maintain a positive state of mind during the long, dark, frosty evenings. The psychology of survival has always demanded at least a minimal variety in a meager diet. Sometimes sour wild berries were added to the huge barrels used for pickling. Cranberries or lingonberries served as an excellent natural and very potent preservative. They gave the vegetables an extra pleasant flavor and a huge dose of essential vitamins. This recipe sounds quite modern and even vaguely resembles restaurant dishes. Ancient cooks knew how to create true masterpieces from a minimal set of available ingredients. The acidic environment inside the barrels completely prevented the growth of harmful putrefactive bacteria.
It was an ideal and reliable method of long-term storage without heat treatment.
Even if it accidentally froze, sauerkraut didn't lose any of its beneficial properties. It was simply thawed near a hot hearth and served immediately. Such incredible versatility made fermentation the undisputed champion among medieval culinary techniques. Today, fermentation is once again becoming an incredibly popular global culinary trend. Chefs proudly tout the benefits of fermentation in their upscale restaurants. They use beautiful glass jars and sophisticated temperature control devices. Medieval families achieved the same results in damp, dark earthen cellars. This historical fact inspires genuine admiration for the resilience and ingenuity of our distant ancestors. The period from February to the end of April was the most dreadful time of the year. Historians traditionally refer to this difficult season by the harsh term hunger window. The old autumn food reserves in peasant homes were already nearly completely depleted. At the same time, the new long-awaited crop had not even been planted yet. During this dreadful time, the strictest and most ruthless rationing was introduced in the communities. Daily rations were calculated down to the last crumb for each family member. The mathematics of medieval winter survival were incredibly harsh and utterly uncompromising. Food was distributed first and foremost to those who performed heavy physical labor. The primary goal was to ensure they retained their strength for the upcoming spring planting season. The weak and the elderly received only the most pitiful and meager scraps of food. It is extremely difficult for modern people to comprehend such soul-chilling everyday cruelty. However, the community leadership thought exclusively in terms of the collective survival of the entire clan. If a strong worker died of starvation, the field would remain completely unplowed. Then during the next cold winter, the entire village would perish from inevitable starvation. Therefore, precious calories were invested only in the most resilient and productive men. The human body possesses an amazing ability to quickly adapt to severe calorie deprivation. The metabolism of a medieval peasant slowed significantly toward the end of a long, harsh winter. People began to move much more slowly to conserve precious internal life energy. They spent a lot of time in absolute silence near the dying hearth. Unnecessary conversation was also considered an impermissible luxury that drained valuable human strength. During this period, any available natural substitutes for normal food were actively used. It was in the spring that old bark, moss, and boiled bones were widely consumed. People's stomachs had shrunk to their smallest size from constant severe malnutrition. The appearance of the first green grass in the meadows was celebrated as the greatest religious holiday. This grass was immediately sent to the pots to prepare the first spring vitamin-rich soups. Historical chronicles have preserved many harrowing stories about this time of year. Sometimes driven to utter despair, people began to eat seed grain. This was tantamount to immediately signing a death warrant for the entire local village. Even relatives faced immediate and brutal execution for stealing seed grain. The future autumn harvest was valued far higher than the life of any single person. Salvation often came in the form of the first spring birds and small rodents. Hunting them became the main occupation for all the starving village boys. Any mouse or tiny bird caught was immediately thrown into the family pot. Disgust completely vanished where the true animal instinct for survival took hold. People rejoiced at any tiny morsel of fresh meat after months of bone-aching torment. Those who survived this terrible hunger window went out into the fields incredibly emaciated. Their faces were gray, and their work clothes hung like sacks on their gaunt bodies. Yet it was precisely these people who found the strength to plow the heavy soil once more. They methodically sowed into the furrows the grain they had saved from being eaten during the winter at the cost of immense suffering. Their incredible iron will ensure the continuation of human history on this planet. In most peasant homes, a sooty pot hung constantly directly above the hearth. In this heavy metal vessel, a universal stew simmered day after day. Historians often refer to this dish by the famous term, the eternal medieval stew. Housewives threw absolutely everything they could find into this bubbling broth. This method of cooking was the basis of daily culinary survival for any large family. The contents of this stew constantly changed depending on luck in the season. Stale bread crusts, dried peas, and rotten autumn turnips were tossed in. Edible bitter roots, gathered from the cold winter forest, were often added to the broth. The broth was never completely drained, leaving a thick base for the next hearty meal. Clean water and any new ingredients found were simply added to it regularly. Modern slow cookers operate on a similar principle of slow and prolonged simmering. However, medieval stews surpassed them in duration by 100-fold. Sometimes the fire under such a home cauldron would not go out for months on end. The long, continuous simmering served a vital sanitary function for the health of the entire family. It reliably killed all dangerous bacteria and even slightly spoiled food. This cooking method was excellent for making even the toughest food easy to digest. Old, dried-out vegetables or tough tendons gradually became incredibly soft and edible. Constant simmering broke down any coarse fibers and made the food suitable for swallowing. For toothless elderly people, this was the only real chance to get a hot meal. The eternal stew literally saved the most vulnerable segments of the harsh medieval European population. The taste of this amazing dish was a real culinary lottery every day. On Monday, the stew might have a sharp aftertaste of acorns and old carrots. On Wednesday, it took on the aroma of dried fish or a small bird caught by chance. To modern gourmets, such inconsistency in the recipe would seem like a true gastronomic nightmare. But for a hungry peasant, it was the most delicious food in the world. Cleaning such a pot occurred only if it cooled down completely and unexpectedly. This happened extremely rarely, for example, during a move or serious breakdown of the stove itself. On ordinary days, a thick layer of burnt-on old fat gradually built up on the walls. Peasants considered this crust a most valuable source of extra flavor for future new servings. No modern detergents existed, and they would have been completely unnecessary here. Legends claim that some stews could simmer continuously for decades on end. Of course, this is likely a charming historical exaggeration, but the principle itself is entirely real. The method of the perpetual pot became a symbol of the continuity of the hardest peasant life in Europe. As long as steam rose from the stew over the fire, the family had a chance to survive the winter. This sooty piece of iron was a true lifeline in a sea of cold. In the harsh conditions of winter, farm animals were the greatest asset of any household. Slaughtering a cow or a strong ox in winter meant depriving oneself of vital spring resources. Without a cow, a family would permanently lose access to nutritious milk during the summer. Without an ox, it was physically impossible to plow the heavy soil during the spring planting season. This was tantamount to a guaranteed delayed death from the inevitable mass famine the following fall. Therefore, the peasants devised a shocking but incredibly pragmatic way to obtain valuable animal protein. Instead of a full slaughter, they carefully bled the live and still strong livestock. They took exactly the small amount of blood that would ensure the animal did not die. This procedure required immense experience and a basic understanding of ancient peasant-applied veterinary medicine. The wound was then carefully bandaged, and the animal continued to live in the warm family barn. The fresh, warm blood obtained was immediately mixed with oats or meager scraps of flour. The result was very filling blood cakes or primitive, dense, dark sausages. To modern people, such a culinary approach may seem barbaric and utterly unacceptable. However, this ancient dish contained a critically important amount of iron for human health. It instantly restored strength to pale and weak people exhausted by long periods of starvation. Today, traditional black blood sausage is freely sold in stores across many countries. Its origins trace back precisely to these harsh medieval survival practices. What is now considered a savory delicacy was once an incredibly desperate measure. The blood of live livestock literally replaced the fresh meat missing from people's diets. It was a brilliant way to eat part of an animal while keeping it alive. Farmers treated their animals with great care after such a painful bloodletting procedure. They tried to feed the weakened cow the best hay from their remaining meager winter supplies. Human and animal survival during this period were incredibly closely and inextricably linked. Livestock warmed people with their body heat in the barn, and people protected them from predators. It was a harsh but honest natural symbiosis in the conditions of extreme winter cold. The bloodletting was carried out in the strictest secrecy from tax collectors and feudal lords. The authorities might have regarded it as a waste of valuable property or a sign of the household's imminent ruin. Peasants carefully concealed the traces of their culinary experiments from any prying eyes. A neighbor's denunciation could lead to the confiscation of livestock in favor of a cruel local lord. Therefore, these hearty blood cakes were always eaten in complete darkness behind tightly closed doors. Today, animal rights activists would be absolutely horrified by such methods. But to a medieval peasant, arguments about humanity would have seemed an incredible and foolish luxury. His sole purpose in life was to keep his family alive until the first green grass appeared. The choice was not between good and bad, but between death and survival. In such a situation, any available calories instantly became fully justified and legitimate. This historical fact vividly demonstrates the incredible gulf between the past and our present. Modern people faint at the mere sight of a drop of someone else's blood. Medieval people saw in it their only reliable salvation from certain death. This harsh era forged people with iron wills and incredibly strong nerves. They were ready for absolutely anything for the sake of their small peasant family's survival. Acorns were another extremely popular historical substitute for grain, which was unavailable in winter. Vast oak forests generously blanketed the ground with these dense brown fruits every autumn. However, these nuts cannot simply be picked up and eaten due to their high natural toxicity. They contain a huge amount of bitter tannins that are very dangerous for digestion. Eating raw acorns inevitably led to severe poisoning and intense stomach pain. Therefore, medieval families began the complex process of processing acorns as early as the beginning of autumn. The fruits gathered in the forest were carefully stripped of their hard shells during long, dark evenings. Then they were soaked in water for a long time. Sometimes this process took several long weeks. The water had to be constantly changed to fresh water to wash away all the dangerous natural bitterness. It was an incredibly monotonous, exhausting, yet absolutely vital task for the family. Modern wilderness survival enthusiasts often try to replicate this ancient process. They quickly realize how difficult it is and how it requires an enormous amount of patience. After soaking, the soft, cleaned acorns had to be thoroughly dried near the hot hearth. Only then were they carefully ground with heavy stones into a dark, nutritious paste. This finished paste or flour became the most valuable base for hearty winter peasant baked goods. The taste of acorn bread was very different from the soft wheat pastries we are accustomed to. It was very dense, slightly sweet, and had a distinct, heavy, nutty aroma. To modern people, such a product might even seem like an interesting, artisanal culinary delicacy. But for ancient Europeans, it was a clear sign of dire need and impending famine. Acorns were eaten only when the granaries containing regular grain were completely empty. At the same time, the caloric density of these forest gifts was simply phenomenally high. They contained a lot of vegetable fat and beneficial carbohydrates, critically necessary during severe cold spells. A serving of acorn porridge gave a peasant enough energy to chop wood in the freezing cold. Once again, the forest proved its life-saving role in the harsh medieval European economy. Oak trees literally served as free natural granaries for the poorest segments of the vulnerable population. Often, acorn flour was mixed with dried, crushed roots of wild forest ferns. This increased the total volume of the resulting baked goods and added extra bits of essential calories. Such culinary chemistry required housewives to possess the deepest intuitive knowledge of the local natural environment. A mistake in proportions or poor washing of the ingredients could easily kill an entire weakened family. Women passed these life-saving survival recipes down to their daughters from generation to generation for centuries. Interestingly, the ancient Romans also actively used acorns as food during their campaigns. Medieval Europe simply rediscovered this forgotten ancient skill in moments of utter desperation. Today, scientists officially recognize the high nutritional and energy value of properly processed acorns. Ancient people arrived at the same complex biochemical conclusions through trial and error. They knew how to turn inedible poison into life-saving food using nothing but water. Gathering acorns was often the main responsibility of village teenagers and young children. While the adults worked in the fields, the children combed through the autumn forest with large woven baskets. They competed directly for this valuable resource with wild boars and local deer. An encounter with an aggressive wild animal in the forest often ended in tragedy for the young gatherers. But the fear of impending winter famine was far stronger than the fear of a wild boar's sharp tusks. Storing the processed acorn flour required a dry place. Otherwise, it quickly became moldy. It was carefully hidden in canvas sacks near the constantly warm home stove. Every handful of this dark flour was worth its weight in pure gold in February. It gave people precious warmth and hope to survive until the first spring leaves appeared. This wheat substitute saved hundreds of thousands of nameless European peasants from certain death. Today we use acorns exclusively for children's autumn crafts in schools. It is hard for us to realize that these little nuts were once the foundation of civilization survival. Studying such historical facts forces us to completely rethink our attitude toward ordinary, readily available food. We live in an era of unprecedented food abundance, having completely forgotten the harsh lessons of our past. Acorn bread will forever remain a somber monument to the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of nature. Before the widespread introduction of the potato in Europe, the common round turnip was the primary root vegetable. It yielded excellent harvests even on the poorest and most depleted medieval soils. However, the main problem lay not in growing the crop, but in preserving this valuable harvest. To ensure the turnips survived until the famine-stricken spring, peasants utilized the ingenious method of root cellars. This method required no modern technology, only hard physical labor and ingenuity. The turnips and carrots harvested in the fall were deliberately left in the ground until the very first frosts. The light cold helped the vegetables develop a thicker and more reliable protective outer skin. Then the peasants dug very deep pits right in the yards of their modest homes. A thick layer of dry straw or clean sand was laid at the bottom of these earthen storage pits. The vegetables were carefully hidden in these shelters, creating an ideal natural historical refrigerator without electricity. At a certain depth, the ground maintains a constant above-freezing temperature, even during the harshest frosts. This reliably protected the hidden root vegetables from fatal freezing and the subsequent inevitable rapid decay. Sand and straw effectively absorbed excess moisture, preventing the growth of dangerous and voracious mold. Modern farmers still occasionally use this ancient and very reliable storage method. Nature itself provided people with the ideal tools for survival. They just had to figure it out. Retrieving vegetables from such a storage pit in the middle of winter was a truly grueling physical ordeal. The top layer of soil was covered with a thick crust of ice, which had to be broken through with heavy iron crowbars. The farmer would climb down into the icy pit to retrieve a few precious carrots for the evening soup. This process required enormous effort and often led to severe colds among the workers. But the hot, thick turnip soup fully compensated for all this incredible physical suffering. The nutritional value of turnips during the winter was absolutely critical to the peasants' health. They contained essential carbohydrates and vitamins, preventing the widespread outbreak of deadly winter diseases. Of course, a daily diet consisting solely of boiled turnips quickly became incredibly monotonous and boring. A modern person would fall into a deep depression from such a monotonous and dreary winter menu. But medieval people rejoiced at the very fact of having any edible solid food in the house. The engineering behind the creation of these earthen pits was surprisingly precise and time-tested. People knew the exact depth to which the soil froze in their specific region. An error of just 10 centimeters could lead to the complete loss of all stored supplies. Losing the harvest meant certain starvation for the entire family in March or April. Therefore, digging cellars was always entrusted only to the most experienced and strongest adult men. Often, not only turnips, but also firm apples were stored in such pits. The apples released a special gas that, surprisingly, helped the root vegetables stay very fresh for longer. Modern chemistry calls this gas ethylene and actively uses it in industrial storage. Medieval peasants knew nothing of chemistry, but they were masters of the art of practical, everyday observation. Their intuitive discoveries amaze us even today with their incredible accuracy and high effectiveness. If water accidentally seeped into the cellar, it became a real tragedy for the entire family. Rotten turnips emitted a terrible stench, symbolizing the approach of the inevitable, brutal spring famine. That is why the pits were always covered with a thick layer of clay and sturdy wooden shields. They were additionally sheltered from the rain with conifer branches and old tattered leather hides. The struggle to preserve every root vegetable was a true epic battle of man against the harsh elements. Today we buy perfectly clean carrots in bright plastic bags at supermarkets. We don't think about how much effort it took our ancestors to preserve a single vegetable. Earthen pits were the only reliable bank, guaranteeing survival until the arrival of warm green spring. The currency in this medieval bank was the ordinary gray turnip, caked in cold sand, and this currency was valued far higher than any of the king's shiny gold or silver coins. The use of root cellars vividly demonstrates humanity's incredible ability to adapt to any conditions. Lacking technology, people used the planet itself as a vast natural refrigerator for their supplies. This ancient practice saved millions of lives over the long centuries of Europe's harsh history. The turnip stored in an earthen pit became a true unsung hero of everyday survival in the Middle Ages. It helped humanity endure until the age of the potato and put an end to mass winter famines once and for all. In times of extreme famine, the usual boundaries between edible and inedible were completely erased. The most terrifying example was the famous Great Famine that struck Europe in the early 14th century. During those dreadful years, endless rains completely destroyed the entire wheat crop. Desperate people began seeking calories in items not intended for human consumption. Old leather belts, worn-out shoes, and even dry, dirty grass were eaten. To modern people, the idea of boiling old shoes seems like a plot from a dark, absurd comedy. However, historical chronicles record in detail numerous instances of such desperate, extreme behavior by peasants. Leather items were boiled for a long time in cauldrons to extract even a small amount of animal glue from them. This murky broth had no taste, but it created the illusion of a full stomach. Survival forced people to literally eat their own old clothes for the sake of a tiny chance of salvation. Modern chemists confirm that boiled leather does indeed contain a minimal amount of protein. However, the energy required to digest such a concoction often exceeded its meager nutritional value. People ate this not for the calories, but simply to stop the agonizing physical pain in their stomachs. The process of boiling the leather straps took several days and filled the house with a terrible chemical stench. But when the alternative is a painful death, any smell instantly becomes completely acceptable. Today, trendy nutritionists advise adding plenty of varied green organic grass to your diet. Medieval people would have given all the gold in the world for a piece of ordinary fatty pork. For them, eating grass was not a sign of a healthy lifestyle, but a symbol of utter ruin. Many died right in the meadows with their mouths stuffed with green matter, never having absorbed any calories. This is a stark reminder of how easily a person reverts to animal instincts when starving. The horror of the situation was compounded by the fact that people fully understood the utter futility of such sustenance. They ate grass and leather in a state of profound psychological shock and utter despair. Desperate mothers tried to feed their children, who were slowly dying of exhaustion, with boiled pieces of leather straps. It is impossible to read these historical accounts without shuddering and feeling genuine horror at the forces of nature. The Great Famine revealed just how fragile the line is between civilization and a primitive state. Survival rates among those who resorted to such an extreme, inedible diet were minimal. Most died from intestinal blockages or severe infections contracted from dirty meadowgrass. However, some people with incredibly robust metabolisms still managed to hold on until summer. These rare survivors forever bore in their eyes the mark of the inhuman biological horror they had endured. Their stories were passed down in whispers so as not to bring such misfortune upon future generations. Preparing the leather required first cleaning it of old dirt and harmful tannins. The straps were soaked for a long time in river water, pounded with heavy stones, and only then thrown into boiling water. This process vaguely resembled the preparation of acorns, but was even more desperate and hopeless. The lack of salt made the taste of this concoction absolutely unbearable for any normal person. But the instinct for self-preservation forced people to swallow this vile mass over and over again. Today's filmmakers often romanticize the Middle Ages, depicting knights and lavish palace feasts. The true history of this harsh era is written in mud, hunger, and boiled-down old shoes. Understanding these facts helps us appreciate the achievements of our modern agricultural and logistics systems much more fully. We have forever forgotten what true mass starvation is, a force that destroys the human psyche and morality. And for this, we owe an endless debt of gratitude to modern scientific food production technologies. The facts about eating leather and moss remain the darkest pages of history. They serve as a grim warning to all future carefree generations of well-off and well-fed people. The laws of nature are utterly merciless to those who cannot provide themselves with the necessary energy. Humanity has endured unimaginable suffering to build a modern, safe, and comfortable world. The memory of this suffering should compel us to appreciate every slice of bread on the table. To avoid wasting precious calories, peasants radically changed their entire way of life. During the coldest and hungriest winter months, families tried to move as little as possible. Historians often compare this period to the true winter hibernation of wild forest animals. People spent most of the short winter days simply lying in their warm beds. Any unnecessary physical exertion was considered an absolutely unacceptable waste of vital, precious energy. To conserve as much heat as possible, the whole family huddled closely together in the dark. Often, small domestic animals were brought into the same hut for the winter to provide additional warmth. The warmth from cows and sheep helped people stay from freezing in the bitter January frosts. This forced, close symbiosis between humans and animals was a perfectly normal part of medieval life. Modern hygiene standards would be horrified by such close interspecies cohabitation in the bedroom. Modern people actively ski in the winter, go to gyms, and walk in parks. To a medieval peasant, such an incredible waste of calories for the sake of entertainment would have seemed a sign of severe madness. Every extra movement burned energy that could not be replenished in any way until spring. Therefore, the ideal winter day was one in which a person did not get out of bed at all. Life literally froze, putting all physiological processes on the longest natural pause. Biologically, this behavior closely resembles torpor, a state of reduced activity found in many animals. The temperature in peasant dwellings was only a few degrees above the deadly freezing temperatures outside. In such harsh conditions, the human metabolism automatically slowed down, requiring significantly less of the meager food available. The heartbeat became less frequent, and breathing more shallow and calm for long hours. The body ingeniously adapted to the harsh conditions, trying to hold out until the saving, warm, sunny days arrived. Psychologically, enduring months in a dark and cold hut was an incredibly difficult ordeal. People had no internet, books, or bright electric lights for winter entertainment. They simply lay in the semi-darkness, listening to the howling of the cold, piercing wind beyond the thin walls. Elder family members would sometimes tell ancient tales to distract the children from the agonizing pangs of hunger. These tales became the foundation of the rich European folklore that has survived to our fortunate times. The economic life of entire nations during this period was brought to a complete and prolonged standstill. Trade ceased, large-scale construction halted, and even the brutal feudal wars between lords came to a standstill. Winter was the harshest and most unyielding dictator, to whom absolutely all classes of society were subject. No king could force a hungry and frozen peasant to perform hard labor in winter. Nature dictated its own harsh laws, before which both the rich and the poor were equal. To escape the cold, people often put on every single piece of clothing they had in the house. Layers of dirty, coarse wool and linen did an excellent job of retaining body heat under the blankets. Taking off these clothes until spring was strictly forbidden due to the high risk of fatal hypothermia. This led to the widespread proliferation of parasites, which became a true scourge of the winter season. But flea bites were far less dangerous than death from an icy February draft. The gradual emergence from this state of winter torpor began only with the first spring thaws. People struggled to get out of bed, feeling incredible weakness in their atrophied muscles. The first steps into the bright sunlight after months of darkness often led to temporary snowblindness. Spring was perceived not simply as a change of season, but as a true miracle of literal resurrection. Every person who had survived the winter felt as if they had been reborn into this world. This method of hibernation demonstrates just how deeply humans are integrated into nature's biological rhythms. Unable to overcome the harshness of nature, ancient people wisely chose to temporarily submit to it. This ingenious energy-saving strategy allowed the human population to survive the coldest eras in our history. Understanding these facts inspires immense respect for the wisdom and patience of our distant ancestors. They knew how to wait for spring like no one else in today's hectic and fast-paced world. The history of medieval winter survival is an incredible tale of human resilience and pragmatism. These harsh methods show that, for the sake of survival, people are willing to break any conceivable taboos. Boiled bones, tree bread, and earthen pits saved millions of lives over the centuries. To modern people, these culinary and daily practices may seem barbaric and disgustingly cruel. However, it is precisely thanks to this incredible resilience of our ancestors that we exist on this planet today. By studying these amazing and frightening historical facts, we begin to truly appreciate modern comforts. Our world of warm apartments and 24-hour supermarkets is the greatest achievement of human civilization. Ancient people would have given anything for a single trip to a modern, heated grocery store. Their harsh experiences serve as a powerful reminder of just how comfortable our daily lives have become. The memory of these trials makes every modern, well-fed feast a true historical miracle and celebration.